Hello everyone, this is Colin Goebel. Welcome to your first game, Devilishly Easy. What you see on the screen in front of you is a copy of the disc, the CD, which comes with the book by Mark Overmars. And in there, in addition to some finished games and images, the thing we're interested in right now is the folder called Resources on the CD. And the resources are all the images and audio clips that we're going to be using for the various games this term. The one we're interested in this point is the resources for Chapter 2, the game Devilishly Easy. They're here. So I've already created a folder for this term on my drive. It's called CS133G. I'm going to create a subfolder for this particular game. Let's call it, let's create this subfolder and let's call it Devilishly Easy. Devilishly Easy. And in the subfolder for this game, let's create another subfolder called Resources. And so we'll create a new folder. Let's call that folder Resources. And what I'd like to do is take all of the resources from, let's see, where was it? All of the resources from Chapter 2. We'll select all of those and we'll copy them across and place them in the resources for Devilishly Easy. So I'll just highlight that. And so I should copy across. Looks as though this is going to take a moment from my CD drive. There we go. And so everything that was on the CD for Devilishly Easy, we now have in the folder called Resources. Okay, let's minimize that and let's launch GameMaker 7. I happen to have the professional edition, but you may well have the light edition. It should look the same. Let's start our project by, if you haven't already done so, let's create a new game. So we'll click on File, New. And also, by the way, you might want to check that Advanced Mode is set with that little check mark there. If it's not set, you don't have a full array of menus and objects you can work with, so it might be helpful to make sure that you have your system set in Advanced Mode. And so you have the full array of facilities of GameMaker available to you. Okay, well, the first thing that we need to do is create a sprite for our game. So we can either go to the Resources menu and create a sprite, or what I like to do actually is right-click on Sprites. We'll go to Create Sprite there. It does exactly the same thing. And let's load a sprite. So the sprite we're interested in is the dragon sprite. So let's click the Load Sprite menu. We're interested here in navigating to that resources file that we created earlier. So in my case, it was on my hard drive, CS133G, Devilishly Easy, Resources, and this looks as though it's our dragon.gif, and there's a picture of it right there. Now we don't really want to call our dragon sprite 0, so I'm going to call this sprite sprite with an underbar. Oops, spelt that wrong. sprite underbar dragon. And we'll just leave it like that. We'll click the OK button. And we should now, if we click on this, be able to see that we have a sprite dragon. A sprite in GameMaker is merely a visual image, a visual representation of an object. And our player in this case is going to be a dragon, so there he is. Okay, now we would really like to be sure that if we look at our dragon, let's be sure that the transparent button is checked. The reason for that is when the sprite is displayed in GameMaker, we don't want to see this bright blue background everywhere. We'd like the bright blue background in the game is played to be replaced by the underlying background of the game. So we'll want to make sure that transparent is set, and that will cause the blue background to vanish when we play the game. Okay, we'll create the next sprite for the game. So this one is going to be the boss sprite. Let's call it sprite boss. Let's load that sprite, which is boss.gif. There it is, a rather nasty looking dragon. We need a demon sprite. So we'll create a third one. Sprite demon. And we'll load that sprite, which is demon.gif. Let's do the remainder here. We'll create another sprite. This sprite is going to be baby.gif, so we'll call this sprite baby. We'll load this sprite, and it's the baby. Cute looking baby there. And finally, of course, we need a fireball, so fireball.gif. Let's right click here, create sprite, sprite fireball. We'll change the name. We'll load the sprite, which is the fireball, and we'll click on OK. So at this point in our game, we have 5 sprites or 5 different images for the various objects that participate in this game. Now, as I said, sprites are just visual representation of objects. They don't actually do anything. So the next thing that we'll create are the objects that we're going to manipulate in our game as the game proceeds. Okay, so let's first of all look for the boss object. So we'll create a boss object. I'll right-click on objects, create object. And instead of calling it object 0, I'll call it object boss. And I'm going to call it object boss so that later on all of our objects will start object and our sprites will start sprite, so that we know what kind of thing these names refer to. Okay, so we need to associate a visual representation with our boss object. That's easy. We'll click on the sprite. We have a sprite boss here. So our boss object is associated with the boss sprite. And at this point, we'll click on OK. Okay, so for the boss object, let's double click here. This opens up a set of objects associated with the boss object. And let's add an event. So I'm going to click the Add Event button. We will use the Create event, and this event occurs when the boss object is created. So the boss object in this case is going to be created when the game begins. Okay, so the event that we're looking at is the Create event, and the action that we're going to look at is the Move Fixed action. So let's do that. Move Fixed is this one. Notice we've got several tabs here of potential actions on the right-hand side. I'll take the first tab, which is the Move tab. There are many possible actions here, and you probably want to hover over each of them and see what they are. But the one we're interested in right now is the Moved Fixed action. So when the Create event occurs, this boss object is going to start moving in a given direction. And the direction that we're interested in is the up direction. So I'm going to click on that up button, and the speed we're going to set is 8. And this means that, 8. And this means the boss object is going to start moving upwards with a speed of 8 pixels per game step. And by the way, there are 30 game steps every second. So the boss object is in fact going to move at 240 pixels upwards per second. Okay, let's click OK for that. So when the boss object is created, it's in fact going to start moving upwards. Now, at some point, we're going to want the boss to reverse direction when it hits the top of the room. So I'm going to add another event here. And we're going to take the, from other, we'll take intersect boundary, which means this is going to occur if the boss object should ever reach the edge of the room. We'll click that, intersect boundary. And what we have to do now is develop the list of actions that are associated, that we need the boss object to perform when it gets to the edge of the room. In this particular case, it's quite simple. We want the boss to be going up. If it was going up, we want it to go down, and if it was going down, we want it to go up. So what we need to do is reverse the vertical direction, and I think we'll find it's that action there, reverse vertical. So we'll put that there. It is the boss object that we want to reverse. So to repeat, when the boss object is created, it's going to start moving upwards. And when it gets to the edge of the room, it's going to reverse its vertical direction. Excellent. So let's click OK there because we're done with the boss object. Let's now look for the dragon of the object. Excuse me, let's look at the dragon object. So we'll also create an object. In this case, it'll be object dragon. The sprite that we want to associate with the dragon object is the sprite dragon. Of course, we want the object to be visible, so we'll just leave it like that. We'll double click on the dragon object and look at the properties for that object, the dragon. I'm going to add an event, so I'm going to click the Add Event button. I'm going to choose the keyboard event. And the question is, if the user presses the up key, which is the up arrow, what is it that we want the dragon to do? And the answer is we want to move upwards, so we'll use move fixed, and we'll move upwards at a speed of 16. So we'll set the speed to 16 pixels per second in the vertical direction. So if the user presses the up arrow, then the dragon should start moving upwards, and we'll repeat the thing if the user presses the down arrow. So we'll add an event here. We'll take the keyboard event, we'll take the down arrow, and we'll start moving in a direction. And in this case, the direction is down, and we'll also go at a speed of 16. Very good. So we have our dragon object, which we can control with the up and down keys to move up and down on the screen. Now, of course, if the user releases both keys, we want the dragon to stop moving, so we'll add a third event. We'll choose the no key event, so we'll go to the keyboard and we'll choose no key. And for no key, we're going to want to move in a certain direction. So we'll just take the move fixed. We'll set the direction to be no direction, and we'll set the speed to 0. Okay, we'll click on OK for the dragon. Now, in GameMaker, all of the actions occur in a room. A room is like a level that you may be used to in your games. So we'll create a room here. We need a room in which to play our game. I'll right-click. We'll create a room. And let's call our room First Room. So we'll take our settings for the room. I'll click on, these are several tabs that allow us to control what happens with the room. So let's take this room here. On the Settings tab, let's give it a name. Let's call it Room First. We'll enter a caption for the room, which will appear in the title bar. So we'll call it Evil Clutches. Whoops, can't spell evil. Evil, C-L-U-T-C-H-E-S, Evil Clutches. We can set the width and height of the room in pixels. The standard is for our game to refresh the screen 30 times a second. We won't touch that. So I'm just going to save the room properties by clicking the close the form, saving the changes. If I double click the room, we'll have a layout now that shows us our room on the right hand side. And if I set the objects here, if I click this again on the Objects tab, as you can see here, if I add the object to add with the left mouse right now is set to Object Dragon. Okay, well, what I'm interested in doing is the dragon. Actually, the first one we'll do is the boss object. So I'll take the boss object, we'll place an instance of the boss on the right-hand edge of the room. So let's place the boss object, shall we say, no. So I'll right-click to remove it. Let's place the boss object right around there. So if you left-click, it'll place a boss object in the room. If you right-click, it will remove the object from the room. So I'll make sure that the object to add with left mouse is the boss object. I'll click that again there. And we'll take our dragon, and we'll add our dragon on the left-hand side. So we'll put our dragon over here. And now we can actually see the results that we've got. So we've designed our room. It has a dragon, and it has the boss. Let's run the game and see what it looks like. I'll click the green arrow. And the first thing we notice is the dragon moves up and down. It starts by moving up, and when it intersects the boundary, it reverses direction. And the dragon we can control with the arrow key. I hit the up arrow, it goes up. I hit the down arrow, it goes down. And if I release both arrows, it stops moving. Very good. So far everything seems to be working fine. By the way, Evil Clutches appears in the title bar up there. I will stop the game at that point, and if you haven't done so already, what we'll do now is we'll save this game. So I'm going to select Save As. And I want to store it on my C drive, CS133G, devilishly easy, and I'll call this devil1.gmk. So I'll give it a name here. I'll call it DEVIL1 because it's version1.gmk. I'll save it there, and at that point, hopefully my work is saved. I'll close down GameMaker, and that finishes the first part of the demonstration. Thank you.